Hello everyone, welcome back to the channel. Today, we are going to talk about something that surprises many people, the languages of Latin America. Many people think that everyone in Latin America speaks Spanish, but that's not actually true. In fact, Latin America is linguistically very diverse. There are several languages spoken across the region, including Spanish, Portuguese, French, and hundreds of indigenous languages too. And of course, today we are also going to talk about Brazilian Portuguese, since Brazil is the largest country in Latin America. So in this video we will explore why most of Latin America speaks Spanish, why Brazil speaks Portuguese, other languages in the region, and some interesting linguistic facts about Latin America. Let's begin. What's Latin America? First, let's define what Latin America actually is. Latin America generally refers to countries in the Americas or the continent, North, South, and Center, where languages derived from Latin are spoken. These languages are called Romance languages. The main Romance languages in Latin America are, in first place, Spanish, then Portuguese, and French too. That's why countries like Brazil, Mexico, Argentina, Colombia, and Chile are considered parts of Latin America. But the linguistic story is much deeper than that. Why do most countries speak Spanish? Most countries in Latin America speak Spanish because of Spanish colonization. Starting in the late 1400s, Spain explored and colonized large parts of the Americas. As a result, Spanish became the dominant language in many regions, including Mexico, Peru, Colombia, Chile, Argentina, Venezuela, and many others. Basically, some of North America, almost all Central America, and almost all South America. Today, Spanish is the most widely spoken language in Latin America. However, it's important to remember that Spanish itself has many varieties. Spanish in Mexico sounds different from Spanish in Argentina or Spain, just like English sounds different in the US, the UK, and Australia, for example. Why does Brazil speak Portuguese then? Now here comes one of the most interesting parts. Brazil speaks Portuguese because it was colonized by Portugal, not Spain. In 1494, Spain and Portugal signed an agreement called the Treaty of Tordesillas. This treaty divided the newly discovered lands between the two empires. Because of that division, the area that is now Brazil became part of the Portuguese Empire. Portuguese settlers arrived, and over time the language spread across the territory. But there are some other kinds of wars and conflicts, and other people to here that was trying to take territories, like the French, for example. Today, Brazil has more than 200 million people, and it's the largest Portuguese-speaking country in the world. In fact, most Portuguese speakers in the world live in Brazil. Brazilian Portuguese versus European Portuguese. Even though the language is the same, Brazilian Portuguese and European Portuguese sound quite different. Brazilian Portuguese generally has more open vowels, a slower rhythm, clearer pronunciation. Many learners say Brazilian Portuguese is easier to understand. Vocabulary can also be different in same aspects. For example, in Brazil people say trem, train, while in Portugal they say comboio. Another example, ônibus no Brasil, autocarro, Portugal. But speakers from both countries can still understand each other. And in some countries in Africa too. And some countries in Africa that speak Portuguese too. Before Europeans arrived, the Americas were already home to hundreds of indigenous languages. Many of these languages still exist today, but less, not the same importance than before. Don't forget that the indigenous people are very big people, very large people. They aren't so stupid like Europeans use it to say or to think. Some important indigenous languages include Quechua, spoken in Peru, Bolivia, Ecuador. Guarani, spoken in Paraguay and parts of Brazil and Argentina. Nahua, spoken in Mexico. Aymara, spoken in Bolivia and Peru. In Paraguay, Guarani is especially interesting because it's an official language along with Spanish, and many people speak both. In Brazil, there are also many indigenous languages, although Portuguese is a dominant national language. Latin America also includes other languages besides Spanish and Portuguese. For example, in Haiti, people speak French, Haitian Creole. In French Guiana, people speak French. And in many parts of Latin America, you can find communities that speak German, Italian, Japanese, Arabic, etc. because of, especially of immigration, But don't forget there are languages of communities. These languages arrived through immigration, and they are important part of our accents, vocabulary, etc. today too, like the indigenous languages. For example, Brazil has one of the largest Japanese communities outside Japan, and Italian communities too. Interesting linguistic facts about Brazil. Here are a few fun facts about languages in Brazil. Brazil is the only Portuguese-speaking country in South America. Even though Brazil is surrounded by Spanish-speaking countries, Portuguese remained dominant. In some places in the borders, there are a mix of Spanish and Portuguese, but it's a very colloquial and regional speaking language, not official. And we Brazilians don't speak Spanish usually too. However, many Brazilians learn Spanish because neighboring countries speak it, but it's not so common how some people from outside think. Another interesting fact, Brazil has over 1,008 indigenous languages still spoken today. Why Brazilian Portuguese interests many learners? In recent years, Brazilian Portuguese has become more popular among language learners. Some reasons include Brazilian music, Brazilian culture, Brazilian films and TV shows. Travel to Brazil. We have a lot of tourist places here, especially in the beaches. Many learners also say that Brazilian Portuguese sounds very musical and expressive, and it's true. So, now you know that Latin America is not linguistically uniform. Spanish is the most widely spoken language, but Portuguese, French, and many indigenous languages are also important, and some places speak English, for example, too, okay? And another immigrant languages in communities. And don't forget that indigenous are communities too today. Brazil stands out as the largest Portuguese-speaking country in the world, with a rich linguistic and cultural story. If you're interested in learning Brazilian Portuguese, exploring Brazilian culture, or understanding languages in Latin America, there is a lot to discover, and I'm gonna try to show you something, okay? Thanks for watching and see you in the next video. Don't forget to give me a like if you like it and to share it with your friends. See you!